First of all, I'm losing my voice. And secondly, this video is not going to be a visual presentation of any sort. Just going to have video footage of the tutorial area of Baldur's Gate 3 playing while I talk. So all you need is your ears. So as many of you are aware, there's quite a lot of drama going on in the D&D world. Up to this point, I've just been a silent watcher waiting for more information to come out. I've mostly felt like other channels were much more qualified to speak on these matters than I am, especially the many tabletop RPG creators that are out there. Luckily for me, in a YouTube career sense, even if really bad things were to come to D&D, generally speaking, with the nature of my channel, I'm fine. It should not affect my personal career or the money that I can make on YouTube, etc. Now, those of you that have reached out to me and were worried about me, thank you, but I do encourage you to forget about me for now and push your love over to the creators who have actually had to mentally go to war with their own minds over the past few weeks, as their futures probably felt like they were dependent on a successful D20 roll with no ability modifiers. Even if the new OGL ends up being something that the community is ultimately okay with, I'm going to explain all this in a moment for those of you who may be lost. It still doesn't take away from the fact that the last couple weeks for many D&D creators and brands and businesses had to have been extremely stressful. And one channel that comes to my mind are the Dungeon Dudes, as they do a ton of D&D stuff. I don't even play tabletop, but I love watching their content and learning from them, to go spread the love. Now, some of you are probably wondering why I'm now bringing this issue to light on my channel. And the simple reason is that I've gotten a few messages from people asking me if they should not buy Baldur's Gate 3 because of everything that's going on. For those of you that are not going to stick around for the entire video, the quick simple answer is, if you're actually genuinely interested in Baldur's Gate 3, this drama that's going on with Wizards of the Coast, in my opinion, should have no effect on your decision. Larian Studios is its own company, and it's not a subsidiary of Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast. But I'll get more into this after I catch a few of you up on the overall issue that's going on without getting too nuanced. So basically, a few weeks ago, there was a leak of a new updated version of the OGL for Dungeons & Dragons. The OGL is an open gaming license, which is a public copyright license made by Wizards of the Coast, the owners of D&D. And what this license basically does is it grants certain permissions to tabletop RPG developers, D&D content creators, and even video game developers for them to be able to legally modify, copy, and redistribute certain Dungeons & Dragons content. So it's basically a legal guideline for what creators are able to do and sell using Dungeons & Dragons stuff. For example, you can use the D20 system and saving throws and stuff like that, but you can't use certain D&D classes, and you can't use creatures like the Beholder, which Wizards claims as product identity. No one can deny that one of the biggest reasons as to why D&D is still around is, of course, because of its core community and what they were able to fairly and legally create under the OGL. Many of these creations have led to new businesses and careers, which have greatly increased the popularity of the D&D brand and role-playing games in general, and I'd say that goes for tabletop and video games. Well, this leak of a new OGL version 1.1 document, in simple terms, was not in favor of the community that has kept D&D alive. It's in favor of Wizards of the Coast and, of course, Hasbro, who owns Wizards, making more money at the expense of the community and, of course, the expense of brands that have up to this point legally built themselves off of the OGL. Paizo with Pathfinder is a prime example here, and they may end up even going to court with Wizards, I think, depending on how all of this actually turns out. Now, it's important to note, like I mentioned earlier, that the actual specifics of this leaked OGL version 1.1 are not official yet. But when this document leaked and then the community backlash came about, Wizards of the Coast basically showed us that it was a legit draft document that they made, and many of these changes were absolutely on their minds. Now, somewhat recently, Wizards would go on to issue an apology statement, which I'd say is a step in the right direction, but no one really knows yet how this new OGL will turn out. And the really poor handling of this initially from Wizards of the Coast was enough to make some D&D fans seemingly done consuming Wizards of the Coast products. And this is, of course, understandable to feel this way, because Wizards of the Coast, under Hasbro's ownership, owns Magic the Gathering, and many of you have seen how that brand has gone downhill over the years, as it clearly loses its focus on the actual players and their enjoyment of the products, and hones in on maximizing how much money they can squeeze from fans. Now, to sum this section up, basically the leak was horrible, Wizards did not respond well to it, fans then became very, very angry with Wizards of the Coast, D&D creators probably went through all sorts of mental gymnastics questioning their futures. Wizards apologizes, but we still have really no idea what will become of the official OGL update, and some people have already chosen to say screw Dungeons & Dragons and are now focusing more on other brands such as Pathfinder. And this brings us back to Baldur's Gate 3. The first important thing to note is that Wizards of the Coast does not own Larian Studios. And Larian is, of course, the company developing Baldur's Gate 3. The development of Baldur's Gate 3 is also not part of the OGL. 6+ years ago, or something like that, Larian Studios obtained their own license from Wizards of the Coast to develop a true Dungeons & Dragons based video game. When I say true, I mean like they're able to use established Dungeons & Dragons lore, most of the rules and mechanics, etc., and they're not limited to the OGL. In fact, Baldur's Gate 3 will become, and it's already become, canon lore in the D&D universe. So the OGL stuff does not affect Baldur's Gate 3, nor should it directly affect Larian in the agreement that they have with Wizards of the Coast. Baldur's Gate 3's development is still going on and going strong from everything that we can see. And believe it or not, we're only a mere 7-ish months away from its official release. Now, of course, I don't have the specifics behind this license that Larian has with Wizards, and of course, Wizards is going to benefit from Baldur's Gate 3 in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure if Larian had to pay an upfront cost to obtain this license, or perhaps Wizards of the Coast gets a percentage of sales, or even a bit of both. But what I am sure of is that Larian Studios would have never taken this license deal for Baldur's Gate 3 if it was not a good deal for them. And how can we know this? Well, Larian's coming off of a highly successful Divinity Original Sin series. They could have easily done a Divinity Original Sin 3 or something along those lines with an almost guarantee of success without having to obtain a license from another company. So Baldur's Gate 3's success is absolutely Larian Studios' success. It simply just can't be a situation where Larian only makes a little bit of money and Wizards of the Coast takes everything from them. Otherwise, why would Larian have ever taken this deal in the first place? They are an already established, successful company. Now, as many of you seem to agree, Larian is one of the few bigger companies around that so far seems to place their reputation at least on a close or equal level to the importance of making profit for their business. And that is certainly rare these days. I'm not going to simp for Larian and say they don't care about money. Of course they do. But they also do seem to still care greatly about their product, the quality of it, and how people will enjoy it and view it. We want companies like Larian to be successful. Whether or not you personally like Baldur's Gate 3, there's really no denying that Larian is putting more time and resources into this project than any CRPG company has ever done before in the history of CRPGs. That's a very good thing for the genre of CRPGs as a whole, and it will set an example to other companies in the industry of what you can do in this genre, what's possible, what can be profitable too, but profitable in a way that benefits the company and the consumer. Now, I have to say this again because some people get mad when I say things like this. This doesn't mean that Baldur's Gate 3 will be the best CRPG ever. It simply means that Baldur's Gate 3 will be the biggest CRPG ever in terms of time and resources spent on a per asset basis. That is very big for this genre. It's a very good thing. So taking out your frustration for Wizards of the Coast on Larian in Baldur's Gate 3, I don't think is the right call. Wizards will make, or they've already made, money from Baldur's Gate 3, but Larian are the real winners here, and the CRPG genre can be the winner, and we should be rooting for the success of this game, especially considering that Larian got into this deal long before the current crap show that's going on. In the future, if Wizards does end up going down a dark, monetized path where the D&D community really suffers, well, the companies that end up cutting deals with Wizards in the future after this has already been established will be companies that are well aware of the current atmosphere, and they will knowingly take on that risk of people not supporting their games because they're cutting a deal with Wizards. It's a totally different situation with Baldur's Gate 3, in my opinion. For all we know, though, perhaps Wizards ends up walking back mostly everything that has been leaked, and the community thinks that their new OGL is actually good, which could possibly happen. Of course, some damage has already been done, but that would be the right step to take if you're Wizards of the Coast, if you want to appeal to your community. If that happens, I think over time people will forget about this and we'll be back to business as usual. And I do hope that that happens. I mean, I hope people hold Wizards accountable and don't let them get away with things, but I do hope that the right thing is done and we can get back to loving D&D and D&D products. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you on a future video. What is that what I say? No, I'll catch you on the next one.